We're live. It is 9:32, so it is technically in the morning. We'll start off. We'll just get it right out of the way. Go get your projects done. Not all of them. Get something done on any of them. But while you're thinking about that, what you're going to do, maybe you're making a list and going to check it twice. Figure out something that you can get done, and then just go get it done. Sometimes you have to do that before you actually get something done, because you have so many things like, okay, what can I get done? What can I actually get done? What do I have all of the things that I need for? Do I have all the pieces? Can I put this together? Can I paint this? Can I take this trim off? Can I do whatever the thing is that you want to do? Can I get that done? Because it's one of the things that stops a lot of things from getting done is you can't get it done because there's something else. There's another hurdle holding you up. Okay, I'm going to go out. I'm going to take that tire off. I'm going to fix the brake. I'm going to fix this drum brake. Okay, well, you take it off the drum brake. It's worn. Got to get a new one. I got to order one. And you're like, I don't want to do that because I know I have to get a new one. I won't be able to actually get that done. You'll be able to get part of it done. And that's more than you had gotten done by sitting there doing nothing. So get something done. So go out and get it done. Make stuff happen. That's how things happen. But today we're going to talk about nitrous, and more specifically, the plate systems. I have a photo up on the thumbnail of I think it's called the crosshair because it's got the little X-Man thing in there. So it's got two sets of nitrous lines and two sets of fuel lines, and obviously they're paired together. And typically what we have on a nitrous plate system for a carbureted application could also run it for a fuel injected single plane or dual plane style manifold that has port injection or something, or throttle body injection on it. You can do that. But where these plates mount under either the throttle body or the carburetor, what they do is you have tubes running through them that they inject the nitrous into the tube, and they inject the fuel into the tube. And then they have a bunch of holes, distribution holes, that normally go out at an angle and spray out. Same with the nitrous and same with the fuel. Obviously, if you're spraying them out at an angle, you want them to go this side to this side of the cylinders, this side to this side of the cylinders, and then the same with the fuel. On a single plane manifold, the crosshair obviously will spray them in each direction. So they'll spray them north, south, and east, west. So the question is, or one of the questions is, does that improve distribution? I don't know if you've ever seen the way, if you've injected nitrous into a manifold, like actually watched it happen, preferably with the motor not running and the carburetor not on there. But if you spray that in there, you can see what's going on. It's a little bit different when the motor's running because it's constantly like grabbing at all of that and taking some of it, which, each one of the cylinders in the firing order. So it's taking some of that away. Obviously, it's utilizing it, because if you just spray it in there and all the valves are closed, it just kind of swirls around in there. That's not exactly what's happening while the motor's running. It's an interesting thing. If you look in there, we've on the dyno, one of the Bonneville guys had a big like lucite plenum that he was injecting nitrous into because he kind of wanted to see what was happening. And so we got to watch, and it's chaos in there when you inject all the nitrous, but it does go in and moves all around. And so I wonder, like on this crosshair system, does it actually, does that improve distribution? Does that make it better? We know a couple of things. One, we know that having two sets of tubes in there, ultimately, if you've got your little crosshair deal, assuming that you are the intake manifold, if you have a crosshair system, if you have two sets of tubes, you certainly can increase the amount of nitrous that you can supply. If the single tube and the flow rate of that single tube and all the intersecting holes that it has in it is the limiting factor with the amount of nitrous that you could spray in there, if that will flow less than the jetting and the solenoid, and that's a limiting factor, having two of those effectively doubles the flow rate, at least of the tube portion of it. It also doubles the flow rate of the jetting and the fitting for the jetting, and then also the solenoid. So you certainly could run a lot more nitrous, and you could even run them staged if you have one kit go on, one spray bar come on, and the other. So you have some options there, which is kind of cool. You obviously could dump a ton of it in there all at once because we have double the capacity. or you could do it staged and progressive or whatever. You could, if you, it'd take it some, figuring out to make all that work, but you certainly could. That's all possible, which is kind of cool. The other thing that happens with this particular setup is, if you notice, for it to be able to have this crosshair and one stacked on top of the other and not intersecting them so that they don't, they crisscross on top of each other, the spacer itself has to be taller. So in effect, we, instead of having a 1/2 inch spacer, now we have a 1 inch spacer, or instead of a 1 inch spacer, we have a 2 inch spacer. I forgot what the exact dimension is. It's at least a 1 inch spacer. I think it's bigger than that. So that in itself, and especially particularly with a carbureted combination, will change what the motor is going to do compared to what it would have done without that spacer there. Forget about what activating the nitrous. When you're not activating the nitrous, what you're doing is putting a carb spacer under there. So that all by itself is going to affect it. And putting a thinner one and a thicker one, while it doesn't always change it dramatically, it can affect it. And especially on an open spacer like this, and especially on an open spacer, if you were putting this on a dual plane, you'd have much more of an effect than if you were doing this on a single plane. An open spacer like that typically is not a big change on a single plane high-rise kind of intake manifold, because it already has that common plenum. That signal is already fairly consistent with what's going to the carburetor. So it's, a lot of times it's not a big change. Sometimes it does change it. And having a thicker one will definitely change it versus a thinner one, so that you have to have room for all the spray bars. So we have that kind of change. So we have the potential to run more nitrous. We have the carburetor spacer itself potentially changing the power output. But what we're focusing on is, does having multiple things, assuming that we inject them at the same time, does that affect distribution? So that's actually going to be our poll for today. Okay. Does the crosshair dual spray bar system, I'm going to put nitrous on here. Really? One? Oh, perfect. Boom, nailed it. Okay, does the crosshair dual spray bar nitrous system improve distribution in the single plane intake manifold? So that'll be our poll for this morning. Let's see, I was just checking something. So the question is essentially, if we're spraying out to the sides evenly, like, can we spray to all 4 cylinders? We know that the carburetor pad, where the nitrous is central in the intake manifold. So if it's spraying, if we have a spray bar that's spraying out at an angle, and we have our intersecting holes, and it's spraying out at an angle, it's really not going to reach all of the cylinders evenly, because normally on a single plane manifold, what you have are the 2 short runners that are the runners that are going to be toward the center of the motor. They're actually closest to the opening in the carburetor, in the intake manifold where the carburetor sits. So they're much closer. The other 2 or the other 4, 2 on each end, are farther away. So you could argue that they're going to get less with a centrally located spray bar system that's spraying in where the carburetor pad is. So there could be a distribution issue inherent in that intake manifold design. So if we have a spray bar now that's going across, we have one that's spraying out to the side, and then now one that would be spraying, it's spraying out to its side, but that's forward and backward. Are we now, the theory is that we would now be getting more spray to the runners that are farther away, to the ports that are farther away from that centrally located pad. So this is all theory. Is that happening in the dynamic equation that's inside an intake manifold? Because there's a lot going on in there that people don't realize. Even just the pulses from the reflective wave are throwing stuff all over the place. And so the obviously the only way that you can figure this out is if you would have to spray, you have to spray the same amount of nitrous. So we'd have to run a 200 shot with one spray bar and then run the equivalent of a 200 shot with both spray bars. So a 100 and then a 100 versus a 200 out of the single spray bar system. And then it would be interesting to do the spray bar system in one direction as a single, and then the spray bar system as a single in the other direction and see what that does. And then do both of them and then have 802s and see what's going on. That would be a lot of work, but that's something that just dawned on me, to spray them individually to see if there's a difference in distribution from those two things individually, and then see if there is, see if having them both spraying at the same time, if that cures this or changes it at all. Does it change it at some RPM and not others? I mean, it'd be an 802 thing with that spray bar setup would be interesting. Not necessarily because the spray bar, I don't see, the limitation I see is in the manifold itself, getting the nitrous to all the cylinders evenly, which is why we do an individual, fogger nozzle. And if you want to have even amount going into all the cylinders, that's what you do. You have it go, you supply the same amount of nitrous and fuel to each cylinder, and you do that by having one at every port. So regardless of what's happening with the intake manifold, it's getting the same amount of nitrous and fuel. Now, then the concern is it getting the same amount of airflow in each one of the cylinders at every RPM? And the answer is no. And is it getting the same amount of fuel from the carburetor, as it draws it through, irrespective of the nitrous and the fuel? Is it getting that in every cylinder at every RPM? And on a single plane manifold, the answer to that is certainly no. So then the question is, with a fogger nozzle system, with an individual fogger, could you then tailor that setup to improve it? And here's the problem with that, is that the air fuel distribution in a single plane manifold in each of the runners changes with RPM. So it's really only something that you could do with port injection and then fogger nozzles if you wanted to optimize the air fuel in a single plane manifold at every RPM. Not that with nitrous, you're not normally running it at 2000 RPM. You'd be running it from 4 to 6 or 65 or 4 to 7 or whatever, wherever you're doing it. In that range, it might be easier to isolate it. But if we're running the motor at wide open throttle without the nitrous from 2000 to 6500, at 2000, you're going to see a lot weirder things going on with the air fuel and then in each cylinder. And then what happens is that's going to change as we get to 3000, 3500, and then 4 and 5 and 6. That's very hard to change, very hard to change with nitrous. I'm amazed that it still works all the time, a lot of the time, but it does. And so then that begs the question is, does having that crosshair system really have much of an effect on this? I've used the crosshair system and it worked very well, like nitrous does. When you add nitrous, it adds more power. And this did exactly that. And you can add more power with a system, which it did. We did exactly that. And it worked very well. I don't know if that answers the distribution question, but we'll see what you guys got going on. So right now our poll is at 53% saying no, that it doesn't improve the distribution, 47% saying yes. So finally got here in time. I want to make shirts with my catchphrase. What is your catchphrase, Russell? We're live. 2 spray bars are better than 1, especially when both are 150 shots. Yeah, because 300 is better than 150. Exactly. My yes was a guess. That's what we all have. There's no way to know unless we test for certain. We would just be guessing. Clearly become my support route. Hi, I'm Richard, and hi, I'm Russell, and I'm a boost addict. Hi, Russell. Depends on how much spray it is. If it's a little, it would help. If it's a lot, not so much. I think this question requires a third response because I'm a definite maybe. But at least you're definite on your maybe. That's important. I used to run a 383 small block with tunnel rams and had all the injectors, gas, and nitrous run in each intake port. That would work good. If I could retain as much as Richard has forgotten. Richard's forgotten a lot. But I'm trying to learn something new. I'm trying to learn new stuff all the time. I think nature should be added with a 3/8 hose directly at the bottom of the carburetor. No meter, just give her all the beans. Oh, you think the nitrous should be added there with a 3/8 hose? That's pretty good size. And also, what are we comparing this to? A 1984 NOS 16-hole spray bar. Any modern spray bar. You think a modern spray bar is better than an older spray bar? Richard, running boost, turbo, procharger, and adding nitrous through a fogger system, is there a point of diminished returns? Diminished returns for what? There's an amount, there's a limit to how much nitrous you can add based on the NA power output of the motor. And if I had to choose between those two, I'd rather add boost than I would add nitrous. I think the barless plates with the down-facing ports, like I think Zex came out with their perimeter plate setup. And I think other guys have done similar things. I think Nitrous Express has one like that I've seen. Well, fellas, somehow I was able to get 210 pounds of compression in my cylinders on a flat top piston stock bottom end and 243 heads with some simple valve spring upgrades. The cranking compression is going to be a function of the camshaft, Todd. It's going to be a function of the static compression and then the camshaft. Richard, are you still working out regularly? No, I need to start. Mostly running and hiking with Milo, huh, Milo? Current modern plates from Nitrous Express or Nitrous Direct offer much better distribution. Their spray bar, their modern spray bar, offers better distribution on a single plane intake manifold than an older spray bar does. I'd like to see what the difference is. My 671 has the 8+8 nitrous jets on dual quads. What is that? If I was running nitrous on a 871, do you have it under the dual quad plate, or do you have individual nitrous like plate setups under the carburetors on there? Either way, on a blower, I wouldn't be concerned about distribution really on a blower application because it all gets mixed around in there anyways. Here's another part of the riddle. Every one of my intake valves kissed the top of the piston. Now, how to tell that happened? I have plenty of clearance. They're clearanced. Are you sure your cam's in right? Because if your cam's advanced and you have really high cranking compression, and that's why the valves would hit the pistons. What's the most horsepower you've seen on a 4-cylinder Honda with nitrous? I don't know. I've never tried to get the most out of anything on a Honda motor, not with nitrous. How do you feel about a seasonal time change? I don't think that they should do daylight savings time, if that's what you mean. Do you need to run a breather system on your turbo or nitrous engine? Are there any benefits to it? Yes, we always do. Like on a nitrous, we always vent that to atmosphere. I mean, on a LS motor, we always vent it to atmosphere. I don't have a PCV system that draws it back in. You spray nitrous into the air cleaner with rich jets. Yeah, yeah. If it's running rich, you can add nitrous to it and then lean it back out with nitrous. Nitrous Express kits use a higher fuel pressure. That should help with the fuel supply. It greatly changes atomization. So again, I just would like to see that. I'd like to see what 6 or 7 psi does on that versus 9.5 psi, and just see what it does to droplet size. It's a Holly plate below the carbs with 8 jets down both sides. I don't know what you mean by 8 jets down. It's a Holly plate below the carburetors. So is it the little carburetor plate system that you would run on an NA motor? Just sits under the carburetor, and you have 2 of those, or is it one big like blower plate that sits underneath the carburetors, like attached to the blower, underneath the carburetor adapter? Because on any 671 blower, you have an adapter that you bolt on that mounts the 2 carburetors. What do you think about bottoming out hydraulic roller lifters with the 5,000 feeler gauge? My engine is quieter and it picked up mid-range and still pulls a 7,000 with a 230 cam. Well, what you're doing is making a short travel lifter, and that works if you've gotten rid of some of the squishy stuff, some of the aerated oil in there, and that can help. What it tends to do is give you everything that cam has to offer, rather than absorbing some of it with the hydraulics. So how's our poll doing? 64% are saying yes, they think it does improve. Bear, 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 bear. Cam is installed straight up, no advance. I've checked that 3 times, so maybe my cheap sloppy stage 2 cam is the wrong brand. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It seems the only thing that's going to make the valves hit the pistons is you don't have enough piston to valve clearance, and that camshaft has more than enough piston to valve clearance. So either the piston's way out of the hole, the head's been machined a whole bunch, or the cam's advanced. One big blower plate below the carb adapter plate. Okay, there we go. That's what I was wondering. The jets alternate jet fuel, yeah, on sides. I think that's how Freiberger's deal was on his blower too. And again, if you just had 2 carburetor plates below the carburetors going into the big mixer that is the blower, once the blower grabs all that, it doesn't grab it and distribute it evenly to the big common open plenum lower intake manifold. It just grabs it from one side and puts it to the other side. So however you're injecting it, it would be fine on a blower application. What's the best nitrous system? I don't know what people mean by that when you ask what the best one is. I always look at that like here's the big thing is like how much nitrous are you adding? Are you adding 100 shot, you're adding jetting and nitrous pressure to provide 100 horsepower. It's going to do that. the perimeter plate's going to do that. The 4 hole or the crossbar plate's going to do that. The individual dispersion plate, they're all going to do that. And then is one of them going to do, how is one of them going to do that better than the other? Are they going to, the only way to make more power with the nitrous is to get more nitrous in. And then you can also trim other stuff like the fuel, like we was talking about. If you can get the fuel droplet size and distribution better, then that could theoretically make more power. Anyone know if someone makes a gasoline atomizer jets for a quadrijet? Does anybody know if that's true? If that's made or possible? Does the Crosshair dual spray bar nitrous system improve distribution in the single plane intake? 65% are saying yes. I have a super power shot running 63 nitrous and 71 fuel at 5 psi, and it still runs very rich. Should I lower the fuel pressure? I would take fuel jet out of it. That seems like a lot of fuel jet. We never run a bigger fuel jet than we run nitrous jets. I'll give you an idea here. What kind of jetting? Going to go to my carbureted stuff here. Let's see some carb stuff. Here we go. Dyno results. Let's just go to small block Chevy. Nitrous. See if we have test description. Yeah, for instance, we have this is a 383 small block Chevy. It was a Blueprint Power Adder 383. And we had a Zex perimeter plate on it. We ran a 46 nitrous jet and a 35 fuel jet. So I think you just have way too much. I think you have way too much fuel jet in it. Are multiple bars better? Yes. One in the turbo pipe, one after the throttle body, and a couple before the blower. That's an awful lot going on there, but yes. In the past, all the strokers I've built as far as lash, I just take all the lash out of it and call it good. The only reason that the dealer or the manufacturer add that 3/4 of a turn, you've on your hydraulic roller stuff, Todd, you're taking all the lash out of it. You're bottoming the lifter out. So you're making it into a solid cam? That's probably not a good idea. Is it safe to do a nitrous bottle chop to check plugs? What do you mean chop? That seems like it would be hard on parts. Even on a tight lash or on a short travel lifter, you're still going to have, I don't know, between 15 and 30 thousandths of movement in the lifter. In the plunger, 66% are saying yes, that we're getting better distribution. Crosshair, Ultraman. Yes, Ultraman. And Johnny Sacco's flying robot. It's interesting the different questions that you get from people that, and I don't know if it's from the magazines or what the deal is, that I don't know where some of these things originated, but it's like, okay, can't run nitrous with a dual plane intake manifold. I'm like, why can't you do that? I don't know. It's a thing. It's not a thing. That nitrous plate will bolt on a dual plane carbureted intake manifold, and you can run nitrous with it. It'll work just fine. It'll work the same way that it does with a single plane. But some of these things are just weird like that, that they're just become established for some reason, and they're saying that you can't do it. Todd, I did you have when you're talking about shaving the heads, did you have trouble putting the intake manifold on? Did you have trouble with the bolt holes lining up in the intake? Because if he took a bunch out of the heads, like it's not unusual for guys to do 30 thousandths cuts on those LS heads. That's not unusual, but 30 thousandths isn't going to take all of the piston to valve clearance out of this. And if you've measured piston to valve clearance properly, you'd see that you were really, really close or that you weren't. And so if you're getting down to where that's hitting, it would probably not hit dynamically. It would hit stationary, at least in all the stuff that we've tested. When you run the motor, you usually increase piston to valve clearance because there's deflection and everything. I bolted an NOS plate on a Performer RPM and it works great. Yeah, it works on stock, intake manifolds, all of these. It works great. We spray 250, 275. That's a good shot through Performer RPMs. Yeah, they work. It works good. An NX Gemini twin plate. I think I ran one of those on a big block. I think it's the same people that say you can't turbo a cast rod crank piston. Yeah, you have to have forged everything in there. Yeah, and you have to have ultra low compression and all that too. Too many people speaking of things. You have no idea about giving too much misinformation to multiple subjects. The thing that I wonder about is how, like, I can understand somebody telling somebody something that's not correct. I've done that. Everybody's done that. I don't understand how that thing has grown over the years and become like gospel to so many people, and to people that, like, what surprises me is it's to people that know better. I mean, that know a lot about engines and stuff, but they're like, oh yeah, you can't run this on dual planes. I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, it doesn't work on a dual plane. I'm like, no, how does it not work on a dual plane? What makes the dual plane different? I can understand where guys have had trouble putting a carbureted plate system on a dual plane and having the thing be lean because you put a carb spacer on there, which will tend to lean out, especially the bottom end, which will tend to lean it out. So if they were already lean and they put that on there and it leaned it out even further, oh, it's just backfiring. You can't run these on there. Like that kind of thing, that would be logical to me. I would understand that. I'm like, okay, we did this and this happened. Okay. And then then it grew out from there. But I want that to be the case. I want that to be that it got established from some real thing and then just kind of grew from there because it happened to somebody that somebody trusts, and then it made it forever. Majority of forums where nitrous is discussed, it's the clowns that have never run nitrous or trying to speak. Well, and you get people that do that, like with nitrous. Oh, you can't run that. You'll blow your motor up. Well, you'll blow your motor up NA if you don't do it correctly. And it's the same thing with boost. You can't add a turbo I can't add a turbo to a stock, pick whatever stock motor you want. And anymore, and I haven't tested on every motor, but I'm of the opinion now that you can add 7 pounds of boost to anything. I mean, I don't know something that's so weak, is so marginal in stock trim that there isn't enough added power or added strength if you had ring gap in it, that there isn't enough added strength that you will blow that thing up just by improving the power output by 50%. I think that's I would consider that an almost universal thing. Sorry, Richard, I wasn't clear on that. I just take up all the free play. Oh, okay. So you're not bottoming out the lifter. You're just zero lashing it, is what we call that. I never run nitrous. That doesn't mean I don't know about it. Power reveals a weak link. Power adder or not. Can't add 7 pounds of boost to a stock Tesla. We can add 7 volts though, right? That's the same thing. 7 high voltages, rock and roll. Maybe the question was wrong. Does anyone custom fab jets and atomizers for specific applications? On a quadrojet specifically? What are you trying to do to the jet rather than have it be just a specific opening? I mean, you can taper the inlet and outlet of the jet orifice, but are you trying to do something else to it? Hi, Milo's dog here. Speaking of nitrous, also be careful tuning it with a turbo. If the propeller housing is small, I've seen guys tear apart blocks or shove a piston out of it. That's the thing is, I think what point Jack is trying to make is that when you add nitrous to it, you're going to add back pressure, and that can become problematic. You're going to add back pressure not because nitrous itself somehow inherently adds back pressure, but the power output offered by nitrous adds back pressure, just like it does if you were to add displacement. What's the most you can do to a 351 Windsor? All aspects. So you want me to sit here and monologue for like 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 hours on everything that could be done to a 351 Windsor? It's probably a better discussion for another day or multiple days or multiple videos. Probably better just to watch all the 351 videos that are up. The motors you get from the Boneyard have built-in ring gap. I don't think that that's true. Have you ever run any of the older 10,000 RPM kits? Is that Hamill that did those? Many of the fastest PSC8 cars dominated with their stuff for years. I don't think I ever have, unless one of the old ones from West Tech that they have one of those. Do you know how thin the ring gaps have to be in order to add ring gap by mileage? And since normally, like back in the day, that was certainly a real thing. If you saw the photo the thing that I posted on Facebook and Instagram on when I was doing the trophy 4-cylinder, the ring probably wore also, but the bore certainly wore a lot because you could tell because there was a big ridge at the top where there's no wear because that's where the ring land is. So if the bore wears a lot, then you have an opening. The ring gap obviously gets bigger. But the thing is, on a modern motor, the LS stuff, there's almost no wear at all on the cylinder. There's no ridge at the top. I've never run across an LS, even something that has 300,000 or 400,000 miles on it. I've never had anything that I can't just pull the piston out. There's never any ridge there, so there's not a lot of wear. So if there's not wear and the ring is not wearing a lot, the thing about them having gap already because they have a lot of miles on them, I don't think is accurate. And I've taken so many of them apart with a variety of different miles, and I don't yet have a correlation between, these 300,000 miles one have 5 thousandths more ring gap or whatever. That's not there. I've taken some apart that have that mileage on them that still have ring gap in the teens, and that's not a good idea to run lots of boost with ring gap in the teens. I wouldn't try to guess the ring gap on mileage. Yep. Yeah, and the Hemis are very tight. Todd, I'm guilty. When I assembled this motor, I did not check piston to valve clearance. That's something that we should do probably. It's not that hard. Do you know how much nitrous a 4.3 liter Chevy will safely accept? The amount of nitrous you can run is a function of the NA power output of the motor. So 50% is getting into the lot range. But if that's a 200 horsepower 4.3 liter, you could run a 75 or 100 shot on it without any problem. Is it typical to bore an engine an extra 5 thousandths when installing forged pistons? Something about thermal expansion. Yeah, you need to adjust the piston to wall clearance is what you're trying to measure, but you don't necessarily have to bore it out bigger. You need to see what the actual bore size is of the piston relative to the bore size that you have. So measure both and then adjust accordingly. Don't arbitrarily bore overbore because you have these pistons. What if the pistons are undersized to work with that bore size? So what I'm saying is measure it. Bear, 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 bear. Is a Lingenfelter Corvette crankshaft forged? I don't know which Lingenfelter you're talking about. I mean, I know who John Lingenfelter was, but I don't know which Corvette you're referring to. I will not be at PRI. This is something I talked with LT Lawrence. Can you swap cylinder heads from different 464s, like from a 3-valve or a 4-valve? They will physically bolt on, but whether or not you can get the drive gear assembly for them, I don't know if all of the blocks universally have all of the same bolt patterns to mount the timing chain setups on them, but all of the heads are interchangeable. They will all physically bolt on. We'd like the jet to have an atomized, more mist-like spray, typical pouring fuel spray. So are you going to be able to get that by changing the jet orifice, you think? I think on a carburetor, on a Holly, I would look at the boosters for that, or I would look at the boosters, I think, for that. But on the Quadrajet, I don't know. Let me know what happens if you do that. Any difference between small block Ford Speedmaster air gap versus the Edelbrock? I think that there is a difference. I think one of them, if I remember right, is one of them has a cut divider and the other one doesn't. One of the dividers goes all the way up, if I remember right. So there is going to be a difference in the signal and probably the power. Just about a bore gauge. My brain can't compute all those numbers. I seriously considered pulling the 6-liter and putting on an engine. I have a 4.8 sitting on toggle right now and dropping a turbo till it blows. What do you guys think? I think I'd like to figure out what's going on with your motor. Ceramic coated pistons seem to protect them from heat. Does anyone protect the top ring? I don't know if I've ever seen coated rings. NOS power shot system. If I did both jets at 71, is this a dual? Peter, I can't remember which combination. Is yours the blower deal? Scrolling. Peter, I'm trying to scroll back and see. Do yours have the are you the one that had it on the blower? Oh no, that was Lazy Hound. So Peter, tell me what your combination is again. The NASCAR teams use coated rings. I wondered if they did, but the face isn't going to be coated, right? Just the flat sides. Maybe the inside too. Which 4.6 cylinder head is the best? The 4-valve flows the most and will make the most power. The NOS chart says 63 nitrous, 71 fuel for 150 shot. Okay, well if you've run that and it's rich, then you should take jet away. We never run a bigger nitrous jet than a fuel jet. I mean, never run a bigger fuel jet than we run nitrous jet. Not on anything. Older kits long ago used to be very, very rich. Yeah, you need to take away fuel jetting. If you have smaller nitrous jets, go to a smaller setup. Like put that 40 or 45 jet nitrous jet in, and then put a 36 or something fuel jet in, and then see how that works, and then step up in jetting. Yeah, so we ran a 46-35. And the 35 jetting was, let's see if we have the. No, I don't have the fuel pressure on there. Normally we do. Normally I do. What's the purpose of drilled holes in some forged pistons? That's to allow cylinder pressure to help push the rings and seat the rings. They usually do that on low tension rings. Peter, we normally run our stuff somewhere between 5.5 and 6 psi on the carbureted stuff on the fuel supply. You should also look and see what the fuel pressure is while it's actually running after it's been activated to make sure that it's that and it's not higher than that. But you need to take fuel jet away from it. On the Ford modular modes, can you replace a 2-valve with a 4-valve head? Yeah, the head will physically bolt on, like I said, but I don't know if the block will let you're gonna have to do more than the heads. You're gonna have to do the head, you're gonna have to do the intake, you're gonna have to do the whole front assembly, the cam drives and the chains and all that stuff too. And I don't know if enough about it to know if the 2-valve and the 4-valve head, if the chain guides and everything all bolt up the same on a 2-valve as they do on a 4-valve. Each 46 jet is going to be adding between 100 and 120 horsepower. Yes, a head can flow too much for the application. It's why most factory heads have smallish cross-section areas, although not an LS and not any import car. They don't have small cross sections compared to their power output, and they don't have small flow rates compared to their power outputs either. Look at a B series or a K series Honda. Almost all the factories are going to more head flow, way more like on an LS motor. An LS3 flows 315 CFM on a motor that's only rated at 430 horsepower. So they're getting a lot more power by having really a lot of head flow, and then that allows them to run really small camshafts in them. So Todd, you're going to go find out. Let me know what you come across. Are you going to try or test the new gas porter rings? A gas porter ring test is a pretty involved and difficult test. I'm sure that they've tested it, probably with race teams. Richard, why don't you do an episode where you swap cylinder heads after each run on a 4.6? So you want me to go from a 2-valve to a 3-valve to a 4-valve on the same motor? I honestly don't know why you would upgrade the heads on a motor and you wouldn't just go get the motor that already has those heads on it, because all of those heads are readily available in any wrecking yard. You can find 2-valve, 3-valve, and 4-valve stuff at the wrecking yard. Just go get those, and you can find them in 4.6 and 5.4 versions. 2-valve, the trick flow twisted wedge heads are really good. They're a lot better than any stock or any ported stock head. But do you have enough motor to take advantage of it? I'm gathering you are noting me missing the pressure element of atomization. Well, if that's what I'm asking, I want to know what you're doing to change atomization. Pressure would be one of the things, especially if you're changing the nozzle design. So that's why I'm just curious to see what's going on. I don't know enough about what guys are doing to modify quadrajets to try to do that. I've never even taken one apart to look at it with that kind of eye to go, oh, here's what I would do if I wanted to improve distribution or atomization or fuel mileage. I've never even looked at that. So I'm interested in this. If my head is shaved, I guess I have to go with a thicker multi-layer head gasket, or put a different head, or put different heads on it. That's an easy swap. You don't have to worry about you don't have to have a 243 head on there. You could put a 706 head on there. You could put a 317 head on there. You could put anything on there and it will work fine. Do any of you guys hear piston slap on cold forged piston engines of say 4,000 piston to wall clearance? 4,000 seems like it might be a little on the tight side for a forged piston. .8 liter VTEC supercharged J series. How are we going to get a 3.8 liter J series? Can intercooler piping be too big? That's not the right question. The question is, why are you wanting to make it bigger? I think on a V8 going from 3-inch to 3.5 or 4-inch, it might increase the NA power of the engine. But you're not worried about the NA power of the engine because it's going to have boost before you're worried about it being NA. Do you change the compression with a head swap? If you're talking about the Ford one, you would. The chambers are different on all of those. They do make a J37, but they don't make a J38. And you don't need to have a J37 to compete with a 3800 V6 motor. A J32 will do just fine. So will a J35. Okay, Todd. So you did use your bore scope. Are you seeing, is the piston, are the bores scuffed up? Is there scuffage? I'm going to go ahead and close our poll at 71% saying yes, that they think the crosshair will improve distribution. Oh. Call me. Yeah, 40,000 piston to wall clearance would be a lot. 4,000 would be more like it. I still think 4 is a little on the tight side for some of the forged pistons I've seen. My streak of answering the poll question wrong continues. We Lazy Hound, we actually don't know what that is. It might be no difference at all if we measured it. It might be that we're asking the nitrous system to cure a problem that's inherent in the intake design, that's not really a fair ask. It's like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm distributing. When I'm distributing it, I'm distributing evenly at every length of my bar and every length of my opening. I'm doing my part because I only have this much hole to work with. So I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe if they had nozzles aimed, that would be interesting if they made a setup that had nozzles aimed directly at the ports, so you could do that. That would be kind of cool. And now somebody's going to do that. Also, Richard found out from a 1320 video that using a tri-Y headers on a turbo setup will decrease turbo lag. I think if stating a universal thing like that it's probably not universal. I am the intake. You're really into character. That's right. You are the intake. You're the crossbar. Well, the crossbar is before you guys, but. All right, Todd, let me know what happens, man. Let me know what you find. Let me know. Let me know. One more minute and I got to go. We're rhyming. And we're rhyming and we're rhyming. And I'm scrolling. Why doesn't the aftermarket show other guys love? It's expensive being different. It is. All right, Dino Tuner. He's out. Two valve. Plastic dip. I remember that. I don't think I've seen that for a lot of years. That was been a long, long time ago. I can still remember. Milo, no kill, okay? It's all good. About the closest thing I've seen to actual chrome. I remember the spray chrome stuff. I haven't. Do they still have that at the auto parts stores? I haven't looked for that in a really, really long time. I don't know that I've ever even tried it. How about a spray bar with 8 tubes that can bend and tweak so they can spray right down to the port? It might be better just to do the. Then it would be the individual. It would be the fogger with all the tubes and nonsense that go along with the individual fogger deal, but all that would be inside. Is that chrome spray? Is it flammable? Nickel is where the shine comes from under chrome. I've never chrome plated any nickels. Yeah, that's right. Chrome puns. Okay, guys, time to go. Remember, a couple things. Go out and get your projects done. Try to figure out whether or not this spray bar system improves distribution. And then everybody come back tonight at 7, and I'll be here. Milo, no kill. Bear.